Yai la la lai, yai la la lai, ya la lai, yai la 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 lai, yai la la lai, yai la la lai, ya la lai, yai la la lai lai, yai la la lai, yai la la lai, ya la lai. Ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la la la.
We gather today to honor the life of John Wasserman, a kind and intelligent man, generous of heart and deeply committed to the people and communities he loved. John was a true friend to many, offering warmth, humor, and always his honest opinions. Those who knew him valued not only his wisdom, but his integrity and steady presence. John passed away peacefully at home, surrounded by family, a blessing and a reflection of the life he lived. Born in St. Louis, Missouri, John's love of learning shaped his path early on. He attended Colorado College, then returned to St. Louis to study law at St. Louis University. He began his distinguished legal career clerking for the Missouri Supreme Court, a role that reflected both his intellect and his deep respect for justice. In 1977, John met Esther. What followed was a 5-year courtship that led to a loving marriage of 43 years, one built on partnership, devotion, and shared values. John's greatest pride came from his family, his children, Emily and Danny, and later his beloved granddaughters, Tegan and Zoe. Oh, thanks. Service to community was a core Jewish value that John lived fully. He served as chair of B'nai Havarah during a critical time of transition, offering thoughtful leadership and calm guidance. He helped steer Stanley British Primary School through the acquisition of the Lowry campus, served on the board of Breakthrough at Kent Denver, and more recently lent his wisdom to Urban Peak during a period of growth and relocation. John also found joy and renewal in nature, especially during summers at Camp Nebagamin. Is that right? First as a camper, then as a wilderness trip leader, he guided young people through the boundary waters, teaching resilience, responsibility, and wonder. May John's memory be a blessing. Zikrono livracha, and may the values he lived by continue to guide and inspire all who loved him.
Thank you, Jeff. We're going to hear today from some of John's friends and family, starting with Doug Price.
Past several days, people have asked, how do you connect to John? And every time they said that, I had to hold back tears. How did John and Esther pick Hazel and me to be friends who shared high school sports, traveled the world together under Esther's expert leadership? We won't talk about being captured by Colombian pirates. That's for another day, Esther. Laughed together, and for the past weeks and months have cried together. For men, friendship is about what you do together, not what you have in common. Sadly, not even how strong your connection is. Distance tends to loosen the bonds of friendship. If you want to know who your friends are, move 30 miles, or in our case, 350 miles. When we left Denver 10 years ago, John and Esther's friendship never wavered. It became even deeper. John and I spoke by phone most days, and the days we didn't, for me, were less rich. This funeral honors John, but it's about those who remain, all of us together who love John and will miss him. Those of us who have suffered loss know well the stages of grief first outlined by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book On Death and Dying. Most of us don't know the book was inspired by her outrage at the treatment of a terminally ill patient dying in a hospital not 800 yards from John and Esther's home. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. John has led us through the first three steps with dignity and grace. Denial is not possible when a man is as resolute as John to walk the trail blazed first by his beloved sister Anne. How can we be angry when John and Esther, Danny and Emily have taken us on this beautiful, sad journey that confronts the finality of death with an open and joyous embrace of life? Is bargaining appropriate when John has negotiated the final stages of his life? When Esther, Emily, Danny, Mary, and Rich have invited us to be part of their own emotional process where we have all gotten to say goodbye to John, let him know we love him, and had him say the same to us. Danny, the depression will come. We're going to get that. C.S. Lewis said the sadness is the loss of a friend. The fear is the loss of the self, yourself, that only that friend could bring. How can I grieve intentionally when the man who was my best guide is gone? John saw himself as a man of reason and intellect more than of ego, a man of modesty all of us could rely upon. John had a way of congratulating his friends for how smart we were. I don't know about you, Spencer and Bruce, but I thought he was really smart for feeling that way. Instead, it was his curiosity that allowed him to ask the most insightful questions. He could draw me out in ways that revealed a more thoughtful side that I had never seen. Most of us knew ourselves better for knowing John. He made me a better man over the past quarter century, and he did it in his own sly way. In the past month, John made sure we had the opportunity to spend time by phone and in person to share memories, affection, and tease each other just a bit. John was the best spiritual advisor to me since we became friends half a lifetime ago. He took great pleasure in keeping me safe from the people who worried him and close to the folks he admired. When I asked him to stay in this world just a little bit longer because he was the only real rabbi this Gentile had ever had, he laughed and he told me I might need to go to synagogue instead. In our last minutes together, I knew how important John's questions had been to me. I was determined to honor him by asking him questions. I only got the answer to one. I said to him, "What did you like best about yourself, John?" And he just sat there and he said, "Tough question," in his breathless way at the end. And he thought for minutes. Finally, he looked up at me with damp eyes and a huge smile. He said, "I liked how much I enjoyed my children as they grew to become the adults they are now. I liked how much I loved Esther and enjoyed spending time with her. I know what John has given me and what he has given to his family as a parent. To Emily, he gave independence and tenacity. He had great joy that she and Cameron have built a rich life with Tegan and Zoe. To Danny, he gave intellect, charm, and kindness. He was so pleased you had found Kate, who he adored. To Esther, he gave love. He gave respect. He provided rich memories and the space to explore the worlds she loves. We're all sad, and if we're paying attention, have that fear that C.S. Lewis spoke about. We know that losing John, we have surely lost part of ourselves. The task is to learn from John and make sure we find the acceptance we need by asking others the right questions, questions that allow them to grow the way John allowed us to grow, to love and appreciate them more as John loved and appreciated us more, because his genuine curiosity released a better version of ourselves.
Thank you, Doug. I'd like to invite Bruce Dubosky.
It was 1993, and I was volunteered to work at a parent cleanup day at Stanley British Primary School at 13th in Quebec. I was assigned to remove old tape and tape residue from a giant picture window. There, I was joined by another dad of young children who had been conscripted to the same miserable task. It was John. And although I remember nothing of the tape removal, I remember well the delight in meeting this bright, warm, energetic, funny guy and planting the seeds of a friendship that would go deeper and richer for over 30 years. I often called him Johnny, and he returned the favor. He called me Brucey. He was the only one who could call me Brucey. Those nicknames weren't just cute. They reflected a warmth, an affection, and a playfulness that's rare. The dude was dapper. At work, he always showed up in a perfectly tied bow tie selected from his enormous collection of ties. He was a sharp dresser, not only in knowing about and wearing good clothes, but he wore them well. John was a leader. He fully embraced the Jewish value of tikkun olam and spent huge portions of his life working to repair the world. He showed me that there are different kinds of leaders. He was not a front page, beat him over the head kind of leader, but rather a leader from behind. offering guidance, judgment, support, ideas, and creativity in authentic, honest, and understated ways. So much so that often the people being led, including me, didn't know it until we followed his good counsel and then recognized where it had come from. His leadership helped shape so many organizations and policies across Denver and well beyond. In addition to the several that Jeff named earlier, he also served on the boards of Developmental FX, an organization that he helped deeply transform. And he also served as the finance chair, as many of you may know, for the many elections of his good friend, Congressman Ed Perlmutter. John Wasserman made a difference. His gentle strength, guided by compassion, generosity, wisdom, and humility, added up to a life of deep impact upon thousands of people. As was shared on the Caring Bridge site, George Bernard Shaw wrote, "I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and that as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can." That was John. Shaw wrote, I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle for me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I've had a hold of for a moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to others. So Johnny, my friend, your torch did not go out. It was passed on. And now it lives in Esther and Emily and Danny, and in each of us here today and on the live stream from wherever you are, in each of us who were lucky enough to know you. A few days ago, as John was in decline, I asked him if there was anything that he wanted me to say today. He thought for a moment, and much like he spoke with you, Doug, he said, "Tell everybody I've had a good run. Tell them that I've been so blessed to have family and friends like you all. Let them know that my greatest blessings have been my life with Esther and my pride and joy in Emily and Danny, two extraordinary and kind people who, along with their mother, have taken such good care of me in these last weeks of my life." Bruce Springsteen wrote, "The road is long and seeming without end. The days go on. I remember you, my friend. And though you're gone and my heart's been emptied, it seems, I'll see you in my dreams. I'll see you in my dreams when all our summers have come to an end. I'll see you in my dreams where we'll meet and live and laugh again. For death is not the end. I'll see you in my dreams." Thank you for walking beside me for more than 30 years. Thank you for your counsel, your laughter, and your unwavering friendship. My life is forever enriched because we became like brothers. You indeed had a good run, although too short. You are deeply, deeply loved by many, many people, and we'll see you in our dreams.
Thanks, Bruce. Next up is Spencer Garland.
Ditto. I am not nearly so eloquent, but you guys have said it all. My brothers and John. John spoke about you guys for many years, and we've only recently come to know each other, but it's a blessing. I have a slightly different take. Our relationship was established and grew under different circumstances. In 1969, after my freshman year in college, I went to work at Camp Nebagaman. I'd never been there before. I hitched a ride with my friend who got me the job, and John hitched a ride with him as well. That's when I met John. He was quiet. We found out that our parents knew each other. And I didn't see him that much that summer because he was a canoe tripping counselor. And that meant that he was out of camp most of the summer, leading 6 to 10 to 14-day canoe trips out in the Superior National Forest and into the Quetico. And truth be told, I was a little afraid of him because we all had to have our hair cut and no beards. And John, knowing that he didn't have to do that, was already bearded and long-haired when he got in the car. And he was pretty scary looking. And he was this burly, strong guy slinging around canoes and Duluth packs. If you had put him in a denim jacket, cut off the sleeves, and maybe put a few emblems on him, he would have been at home in a biker bar. But I soon learned what a gentle soul he had, and was only intimidated by his intelligence, perceptiveness, and wisdom. That was John's last year as a camp counselor. I continued on until after college. And we went our separate ways. We went back to college. We saw each other in St. Louis sporadically. But in 1974, he transferred from his first law school to St. Louis University, where I was, and we were both entering our second year. And we just engaged. It was instant. We were immediately the closest of friends, and our lives inextricably entwined. We were law school roommates. John studied at odd times so he could get to do the things that he wanted to do. I really didn't study much, so I was always able to do the things we wanted to do. John took such incredible class notes, legibly, that he distributed them to classmates. We called them WAS lines. We called them WAS then. And I think those notes got me through law school. He ended up being co-number 1 in the class. During that period, John spent time with me and my family, and I spent time with John and John's family, knowing Evie and Hellman, his parents, and Mary and Rich, and Ann and Mike. In fact, I think it was that Christmas, our second year, John and I went to visit Ann and Mike and little kids. And it was great, and I secretly had a crush on Ann. We both practiced law in different firms in St. Louis, but we hung out all the time. If one of us had errands to run, the other went along, happily and laughing all the time. I wish we could do that now. After a couple of years, I met the love of my life, Betsy. And it was the three of us. We were just hanging out on weekends anytime we got a chance. In Betsy's words, John was an empathetic, funny, loving, and supportive teddy bear. Even then. Next, John met Esther, the love of his life, and who just happened to live in the apartment building next door to Betsy's. It became the four of us, and it was meant to be. Beschert, a little Yiddish. In 1979, John and Esther moved to Denver, but our friendship continued to grow deeper and stronger, unlike miles of separation can cause that to fall away. He was best man at our wedding. I was best man at his. We depended on each other, and I really depended on his wise advice. We talked about anything and everything, and without reservation. We watched each other's children grow up. We went to our respective family events, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, yes, Emily's Blizzard bat mitzvah, and weddings, except for Danny. We spent lots of time together attending various camp events, visits to Denver, visits to St. Louis, and visits to Santa Barbara. John's devotion and commitment to family and friends was incredible, and we all have benefited from that. And of course, back to Camp Nebagaman, we shared a deep love for camp. We went to family camp after the campers leave and the grown-ups get to go with their kids for 7 summers, first without kids and then with kids. Our mutual close friends, Bob and Mary Nevsky, were there as well. John and I spoke at Bob's funeral 2 years ago. We also maintained close friendship with the former owners, Sally and the late Nardi Stein. And each of us was president of a charity that was dedicated to providing scholarships to underprivileged kids to Camp Nebagaman. When camp became a not-for-profit, John was asked to be on its operating board. He was a universally beloved and respected member of the extended camp family. Our kids gave Betsy and me a surprise 40th birthday party a few years ago. Apparently, our daughter Katie had called John and invited John and Esther. John said they were going to Minneapolis and then up to camp. And then 2 hours later, called back and said, we're coming. Of course, I didn't know that because John was telling me that he was going to Minneapolis and up to camp. And we went into the party, and lo and behold, there were John and Esther, drink in hand. An excellent and well-planned job of misdirection, typical John, sneaky John. I was very lucky and blessed to have John as a friend for so long. A privilege and an honor. We knew each other's strengths, weaknesses, and insecurities. He taught me how to be a friend, and I learned so much from him about how to live. As said, our lives would have been very different without John being with them and involved in them. Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we were up to Denver a couple of times. He'd shared lots of tears and memories. He was determined to live life to its fullest, and he and Esther did, cramming a lot of travel in the last 2 or 3 years. He was resolute, unafraid, and to his own mind. It's hard to say goodbye. But goodbye, dear friend. I'll miss you terribly. Safe travels, and we will keep the campfires burning. As quoting a mutual camp friend, we are blessed and glad that you lived. I love you.
Thank you, Spencer. Before we hear from John's family, let's sing a little bit of Psalm 23. This version uses the line that can be translated as, "Even as I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear any hardship, for I am in the presence of love." Nam ki elech begay, sama velo, lo irara. Gam ki elech begay, sama velo, lo irara. Lo, irararaki, atahi madim. Lo, iraraki, taimadim. Yai, la, ya la, ya la, yai, la, ya la. I'd like to welcome John's sister, Mary Weinstein.
Thank you all for being here. Your presence is a tribute to John and a comfort to Esther and Emily and Danny. When John asked me to speak at his funeral, he said, I probably would just stand up here and cry. This is really hard, but I'm going to get through it. As John's older sister, I never expected to speak here today. I guess I'm the one who's known him the longest. When I was 5, John was born. As a baby boy, he was definitely the favorite. Truth be told, I was a thorn in his side for a lot of years. But that was my failing, not his. There are many old family stories about Anne and me torturing him. Again, it was mainly me. When he was little, John had a thing about sleeping on a totally cold pillow, and we could just drive him crazy by simply touching that pillow. Guess what we always did? This past week, I was lucky enough to spend some special time with John reminiscing about our idyllic 1950s childhood. There were not many toys around, so we made our own fun. John remembered gorging on cherry trees from the tree in our backyard and playing blind man's bluff on the rickety porch outside my second-story window. It's a wonder none of us ever fell through those railings. Remember that porch, Alice? Anyway, in the afternoon, we played baseball in the neighbor's tiny yard, and even the girls learned how to throw like a boy. Summer evenings, we played hide and seek. Home base was a big hickory tree in the backyard. And of course, there was camp. We could both always stay at camp all year long. One of our few disappointments was saving up our cereal box tops and patiently waiting for the cockpit of the spaceship to arrive. 3 pieces of cardboard and a picture of dials. We first met Esther when John brought her to a party at our house. She and I were dressed in almost the same outfit, and it was meant to be. That was the beginning of my good fortune to have another sister. Over the years, we had great fun visiting in Denver and St. Louis and traveling together. A favorite trip was to Israel and Petra. Esther arranged for us to spend the night in a tent in the Jordanian desert. After dinner, John went into the tent and came back with a Scrabble board and headlamps. I wish you could have seen us all seated on a Persian rug in the dark with headlamps on in front of a wood-burning fire, playing Scrabble with our Jordanian camel driver who didn't speak any English. Esther won, as always. In recent years, John would often talk of the special joy that Tegan and Zoe brought into his lives. Emily, Dan, Cam, Tegan, Zoe, Kate, please know how deeply he loved you. The photo of the gang on the floor of John and Esther's bedroom, having a picnic on the floor a few days ago, says everything there is to say about the pleasure you guys brought to him, even in hard times. Reading the Caring Bridge posts, I was struck by the continuity of everyone's words: caring, engaged, bright, wry, compassionate, kind, gentle, generous, and brave. You all got his amazing Johnness, and he got yours. He knew he felt your love. I once asked John if he would consider moving to an area where it would be easier for him to breathe, and he answered without hesitation that his community was in Denver. His people were in Denver. He cared so much about all of you and about his personal mission to make a positive difference in people's lives. It's clear to me that you all felt that care and sense of purpose in him. So many of you mentioned that John was a brother from another mother. I am so fortunate to be the charter member of that club. Actually, John and I did have a club, the Busy Bee Club. What a catchy name. Our meetings were held on the floor of my closet, and it was not one of those fancy walk-in closets. We wrote our rules in crayon on the wall. For years, we worried about how much trouble we would be in if our parents sold the house and we damaged the wall. Many years later, the woman who bought the house invited me over to take a picture of the wall with our childhood scribbles there. I will miss you, John, more than words can convey, but I feel like a very fortunate sister. Rest only on cold pillows, my dear, sweet baby brother.
Thank you, Mary. I'd like to invite Esther.
This is pretty darn real here. Thanks to each of you for coming together as a community to celebrate John's life and to mourn his passing. It is a testament to who he was that there are friends here who have known John, thank you, for over 50 years, and some who've known him less than 2 months. So many people have said, John brought out the best in me, or John taught me so many life lessons. I feel the same way. Especially the last month, he taught me to be more honest in sharing my feelings with other people, to ask for help with an open heart, and to receive that help with an open heart. Thanks to everyone for responding to my needs and our family's needs with your generous love. I wanted to share with you 2 pieces. The first prayer is by Rabbi Rami Shapiro. It was John's first prayer in Emily's bat mitzvah service almost 30 years ago. It seems to fit perfectly with today's spiritual journey. I shall enter the heart of the world through the grace of love and bow in awe before the mystery of life. I am filled with love, seeing the infinite in the heart of the finite, and I bend to embrace even the lowliest of things. I stand before the mystery of birth and death. I stand in wonder and call out to life, Hine ni, here I am. Also, this is a poem by Dana Fouds that was in the B'nai Havara healing service on Yom Kippur. It is called Let It Go. Let It Go is also the name of a theme song in the musical Wicked that Frozen. Brain's not all the way here. That Tegan, Emily, and I attended just 2 weeks ago. Let go of the ways you thought life would unfold, the holding of plans or dreams or expectation. Let it all go. Save your strength to swim with the tide. The choice to fight what is here before you now will only result in struggle, fear, and desperate attempts to flee from the very energy you long for. Let go. Let it all go and flow with the grace that washes through your days, whether you received it gently or with all your quills raised to defend against invaders. Take this on faith. The mind may never find the explanation that it seeks, but you will move forward nonetheless. Let go, and the wave's crest will carry you to unknown shores, beyond your wildest dreams or destinations. Let it all go and find the place of rest and peace and certain transformation. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Danny Wasserman.
While growing up, my dad moonlit as my writing editor. As a classically trained lawyer with what some might say was a near obsession over keeping all matters as simple as possible, you can imagine his approach to scrutinizing my syntax. For those of you who know me, perhaps you're then familiar with my tendencies to liberally employ the power of an adjective. Or if you were to ask my dad, adjectives. It was customary that upon reviewing my initial draft, my dad would summarily dismiss my efforts with his judgment. Danny, this is flowery writing. Being sure to designate each and every superfluous descriptor with what he called weasel words. Quite the lesson in delicate parenting. In fact, he once told me he'd give me a nickel for, quote, every bullshit word I edited out myself. Tegan and Zoe, please excuse Pop Pop's language. No surprise, that incentive quickly proved ineffective, as I don't recall him ever paying out. A few days before he passed, I shared with him the general premise of what I intended to convey in my eulogy. He made sure to mention that for every unnecessary qualifier I included, there would be a knock from inside his casket, signifying each time he, quote, cringed at my adaptation of the English language. Here we are. I'm not holding my breath for any nickels. My dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer on Wednesday, October 29th. Within 6 weeks, he passed away. While it's unrealistic to encapsulate the entirety of my experience as a son for the past 38 years, the last 6 weeks provided me with textbook examples showcasing his essence, by extension, adequately illustrating for you all the type of father he was. There were countless moments throughout his stints in the hospital, as well as at home after being discharged, where my dad had every right to be upset, angry, resentful, morose, or dejected from this untimely fate. For those keeping track at home, that was 5 adjectives. And yet, his calm, gentle, and above all else, curious demeanor never faltered. Count him, 3 more. Even after being admitted to the blood cancer floor for chemotherapy, he was unshaken in his genuine interest about all the nurses' backstories, dedicating his mind share to learning and remembering each of their names. From his hospital bed, he insisted on spending his limited energy catching phone updates with friends to earnestly hear about their kids and grandkids. Never once do I recall their discussions dwelling on his worsening condition. While barely surviving in the ICU on respiratory support, he capitalized on his precious time, talking shop with Emily about her latest legal case, or critiquing the dinner menu from the restaurant I had just attended. Amidst his unwanted and unexpected adversity, my dad's insatiable curiosity and others endured. And those who comb through the numerous comments on Cambridge, I suspect that quality of his, or rather that superpower, resonates. As his son, that unwavering attention in me never faltered. When my dad was rushed to the ER due to respiratory failure after a flare in his pulmonary fibrosis, he chose to immediately, after reviewing his DNR orders with the doctors, he chose to discuss which philanthropic donations he would make alongside my mom. When my dad was confronted in the ICU with only days as his prognosis, he asserted that he did not want to prolong our suffering. And for him, that choice of pronoun was no accident. Throughout his time in the hospital and throughout my entire life, it was never about him, but rather entirely about us. When my dad was told by palliative care in the hospital that death can be hard, he chose to remind those professionals that death can also be, his words, beautiful. In each of these exchanges, I bore witness to his signature generosity, selflessness, and optimism, all of which could have easily been surrendered under the weight and severity of his situation, but persisted, nonetheless, as cornerstones to his indomitable spirit. As his son was that steady and dependable moral compass that he represented, and it never veered off course. Over the course of his 6-week saga, my dad maintained that being able to laugh, being able to make others laugh was truly medicinal. I remember one day, he was in the step-down floor from the ICU, and as I entered his room during a fairly critical discussion, as I remember it, with his team of doctors, rather than introducing me to these professionals as his son, my dad instead chose to announce my arrival by pointing at me and declaring, "That man is a total stranger. Do not disclose anything to him, and it's best to now call security." Or then there was the time when my mom left his hospital room, finally agreeing after 43 years of marriage to attend her own therapy session. No doubt, an entirely reasonable and admirable course of action amidst this unimaginable trauma. When I shared with my dad after she departed just how proud I was of my mom for going, how proud I was of him for supporting her in all the choices she made throughout their 43 years of marriage, he responded, "Danny, don't jinx it. There's still time for her to turn around. And if you ever tell her I said that, I'll haunt you for the rest of your life." These bits perfectly captured my dad's style of humor, dry, clever, and lovingly at my expense. Snarky wisecracks were forms of endearment, and I savored each and every last one. With select evenings spent one-on-one in the hospital, our intimate conversations revealed aspects about my dad's character that sure always existed, but as his son weren't previously cogent or crystallized in my mind. One night I asked my dad why he became a lawyer. He responded, "I was never a racehorse. I didn't want to be out in front or the center of attention. But I was a workhorse. I preferred to do the necessary back office, unsung things behind the scenes that ultimately amounted to greatness." My dad wasn't flashy. My dad wasn't ostentatious. While the man strictly wore bow ties, you'd be hard-pressed to describe his 5'5" half-ball Jewish style's attention-seeking. Rather, he vehemently maintained his understated modesty in all his endeavors. Sure, He tenaciously pursued outcomes, but it was never for his own glory or ego. It was for the good of his clients, his friends, his community, and his family. His compressed timeline signaled to both of us that we would be denied experiences we always assumed would be shared together. Reuniting at camp's 100-year reunion, hearing his speech at my eventual wedding, or most importantly, soliciting his advice about fatherhood. One step at a time, Mom. Kate is not pregnant. On November 24th, during our one-on-one evening routine at the hospital, I asked him if he'd be okay to memorialize and record his voice while he answered a few of my questions. Obliging my request, I asked, "Dad, what do you want my kids to know about you one day?" Following a brief and intentional pause, he faintly answered, "First and foremost, your dad and your mom are spectacular." True to form, this response, like all of his responses, had absolutely nothing to do with himself. Self-aggrandizement was antithetical to everything my dad stood for. When asked during his last meeting with palliative care whether he registered the magnitude of the legacy he was leaving, he incredulously replied, "I guess it's bigger than I thought." Before I overstay my welcome any further, I'll close with a relevant memory from 20 years ago. The day was Thursday, May 9th, 2002. Our recurring family ritual on that specific weeknight revolved around watching the latest episode of the hit TV series ER. On that particular evening, our four families, we called ourselves, of my dad, my mom, my sister, and myself, we congregated in the family room to watch the season finale, culminating with the program's protagonist, Dr. Mark Green, peacefully passing away from cancer. As Dr. Green recognized the imminence of his own passing, he chose to spend his remaining days in Hawaii, coincidentally, a backdrop that our own family thinks fondly of as my mom's happy place. With his intensifying fatigue from the disease, Dr. Green's farewell involved a vulnerable and lasting moment with his character's daughter. His lesson to her was equal parts simple, timeless. Be generous. Be generous with your time, with your love, with your life. His daughter internalized the message, subsequently put headphones over her dying father's ears, only to then play the exact same song my dad requested that we play as we close out today's service. Well, there are surely numerous parallels between Dr. Green's integrity and that of my dad's. That isn't the purpose of this anecdote. Rather, when the episode ended, the four of us were all left visibly struck by the power of the scene, as evidenced by the tears streaming down all of our own faces. Those profound moments in life that harmonize the beauty and the tragedy of the human experience were perfectly captured in that episode. They pierced our emotions. They penetrated our memories in an everlasting way. It is that same harmony I see represented today in this to celebrate my dad. During his last days, my dad chose to share a few lessons of his own with me. He would echo Dr. Green's emphasis on generosity, but he had two more bonuses, as we called them. The first, be curious. That's what it's all about, as he would say. The second, don't burn daylight. In the 6 weeks we shared, one of the rare moments when I witnessed my dad's raw emotion was when a doctor inquired why he was scared about saying goodbye. Subtly choked up, he wisely remarked, "It's the terminal nature of this goodbye that's the scariest." As you look for ways to pay tribute to my dad and honor his legacy, embody his curious spirit, don't burn daylight, and for his sake, don't use too many adjectives. Thank you.
We have one more speaker, John and Esther's daughter, Emily.
Well, Danny was always encouraged to use fewer words. I was probably encouraged to use more words, but true to form, I promised my dad I would give everybody else a couple of my minutes to them because they would need them. When I was graduating from law school and going on to my clerkship, things my dad had done, I used to joke that I had failed at not following in my dad's footsteps, despite my best efforts. But the truth is that since I was a little girl and pushed my toy lawnmower with my shirt off, right behind my dad, who was pushing his big lawnmower with his shirt off, I've been trying to follow in his footsteps and emulate him because he was one of the good ones, one of the best. And although the last several weeks were not what any of us planned or wanted, I'm grateful because I had a lot of time to spend with my dad, with my mom, with my brother. And during this time, there were 3 truths about my dad that came up repeatedly. First, my dad loved his family. My mom, Danny, me, Kate, Cameron, his granddaughters, his sisters and their husbands, his nieces, nephews, and cousins. Dad showed us all the importance of showing up for family. He was at every sports game, every big event. He made sure throughout our lives that we knew that we mattered and that he loved us. He even went so far as to steal a bottle of ketchup from the hotel next door on a Hawaii trip when we needed it for our burgers. Second, my dad loved his friends. I was amazed by the number of people who commented on CaringBridge or to me that Dad made them feel seen and important. He was genuinely curious about the people in his life and cared for them deeply. And as Danny mentioned, this was true until the end, where he managed to make lasting impressions on the amazing people who were taking care of him. And to that end, I want to take a moment to thank Gabby and Lisa and Phyllis, who I believe are here today, just for the amazing care that they provided my dad and to our whole family. And he also wanted to extend his gratitude to them. And then third, my dad loved his community and took great pride in using his talents to support organizations that were important to him, whether it was B'nai Havurah, Breakthrough, DFX, Camp Nebegaman, or Urban Peak. He was pleased to be able to contribute and make a difference. And so as I think about how to continue to follow in my dad's footsteps without him, these are the things that will guide me. Love your family, show up for them, take the trip with them, listen to what they have to say, be silly, make French toast on Saturday mornings, put extra cream cheese on the bagels. Love your friends, see them, call them, ask questions, tell them that they matter. Love your community, be generous with your time, talents, and if you can, your money. And of course, try to do this with a good sense of humor and an eye towards causing a little bit of trouble along the way. In the last few weeks of his life, Dad repeatedly said he had lived a good life and he had no regrets. May we all be so blessed. He loved you all dearly. Thank you for being a part of his life, and thank you for being here. We love you dearly too.
I'm going to close the service with a song by Hannah Senish that evokes the beauty of the natural world that John loved so much. Eli, Eli, Shelo Yigamer Leolam, Cho V'Hayam, Rishrush Shel HaMayim, Berak HaShamayim, Tfilat Adam, HaCho V'Hayam, Rishrush Shel HaMayim, Berak HaShamayim, Tfilat Adam. My God, I pray that these things never end. Sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of love.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our service here at Feldman Mortuary. We will have interment at Emmanuel Cemetery, which is within Fairmount. If you'd like to join us at the cemetery for interment, we'll ask you to have your headlights on for the procession. We have an escorted procession that will lead us down York Street heading south. We're going to be using that left lane or east lane. If you're not going to the cemetery, we're going to invite you to also leave the parking lot with everyone else, but use the right lane or the west lane and continue south on York Street. Because if you didn't notice how you're parked, you're stuck. We do want to give away to those who are going to the cemetery. So have your hazards on, return your car as quickly as possible. Please refrain from coming forward and trying to speak with the family. It will delay their process in getting to the cemetery. If you're not going in the procession, but are still going to the cemetery, there are instructions in the handout how to get there. But if you do end up following the procession, please just watch out for the escorts themselves. At this time, we're just going to take a minute to listen to a favorite song, and then we'll start making our way to the cemetery. Pallbearers will ask you to remain behind just for a minute or two to help us with the casket. Thank you very much for your attendance.